The G2 and Carlos drama just won't seem to stop, apparently. So JNT and I are obviously going to cover that. We'll get into, we'll do a little recap because it's been going on for some time now, and then we'll give our own takes and stuff after that. And is EG doomed without Danny? This has been a question been asking for some time now. We finally get to it because Worlds is starting like really soon, and of course there's some rumors going around. TL pretty much making some moves and some rumors with TL. We'll get into all that stuff. There's probably a lot of quick news, but we'll get all to all of that later. Episode 101 of the Clown Fiesta podcast with Blue Jay and JNT 250. JNT Worlds is finally here. I don't know about you, but like I get irrationally excited about Worlds. Like we never really do all that well, but it doesn't change my level of hype for Worlds. Am I alone?
Yeah, I mean, regardless of whatever NA's chances or hopes look like, the World Championship is exciting nonetheless. I mean, I think I've made my opinions pretty clear before. Like, I'm not like I'm not an NA viewer, like, or an NA fan. Like, I'm a Cloud9 fan. Sure, I'll root for some of the other teams in North America to do well, but the World Championships is just the best League of Legends, and you get to see teams and regions from all over the world competing against each other, which is really
Yeah.
rare in the league space, considering there's only MSI and Worlds, and it's those tournaments are usually always bangers.
So let's say 100 Thieves is making a run and they make it to semis. Is that like any bit of hype for you?
Yeah, but I mean, sure, but if they're playing a different team that I might like more, like T1, for example, like I'd root for
Mm,
T1, not 100 Thieves. Sorry, but
cringe.
that's just
I
how it
mean,
is.
that's not really cringe. I actually think there's a lot of people that are in the same shoes as you. Okay, let's get to the Carlos stuff because this is going to take us a while probably. I mean, this started like 10 days ago. I'll do a quick rundown. I got a long list of stuff to get through, but just because it's been so long, I'm going to try to give a refresher. I might miss some stuff. I'm sorry if I do. I did my best today. This took a long time. Okay. First off, G2 wins like and by the way, feel free to interrupt me, JT, if I'm getting something wrong. But first off, G2 wins like an R6 event, and there's the party with Andrew Tate. Carlos decides to tweet it, right? Then G2 fans and staff kind of let him know how they feel about it. They're not happy because, well, he's Andrew Tate is very well known for being a misogynist, and a lot of misogynistic things go on with him. Then, after fans and staff and all the LEC personality and just the whole community in general let him know how they feel about it, he kind of gives them the metaphorical middle finger, right, and says he can party with whoever he wants. This is still like September 17th, by the way, so this is still like 10 days ago. Many G2 fans were let down and created and this weekend, which created confusion. There's that tweet, right? That tweet came out September 18th from Carlos, and then a lot of people kind of let them know, like, "Hey, we're not really buying this tweet from you, man," because like Azale, for example, says, "Not gonna lie, it's hilarious to me that you're making this tweet while still having your pin tweet directly above it defending your friendship with Andrew Tate." So not really a good look. Other people kind of call him out for the same thing. Then we get the 8-week suspension thing. That was as of September 18th. And I mean, myself included, a lot of people saying like 8-week suspension. So what? Like that doesn't really do anything. And then big news hits. Right now, you got a bunch of people coming out saying that because of this controversy, it looks like G2 is out of franchising when they were originally going to be in. There was a CS reporter saying that. There was Jacob Wolf saying the opposite, saying that he had serious doubts that the Andrew Tate video was what moved the needle, as he says. But then LEC Wulu, another really good source, says in replying to Jacob Wolf, says, "I don't know if it's because of the video specifically, but this whole scandal is the reason for the change in G2's decision." G2 was in until last Sunday. He tweets that out on September 20th. And then, of course, 3 days later, that's when Carlos makes his video on Twitter saying, "My time in G2 has come to an end," and he's stepping down from his CEO position. Now we get to today. As of today, we're recording this on September 26th. Luis Mira, he's an esports editor at Dexerto. He says, according to at Esports Maniacos, Riot Games has blacklisted Carlos and forced him to sell his shares in G2 Esports. Apparently there was some issues with translation around this. Esports Maniacos said, "We recommend watching the full 40 minutes. The topic is a lot more complicated, than forced him to, apparently." And then Max, the head of esports for League of Legends in Europe, says, "Hey everyone, I saw several false rumors regarding G2 and Carlos, and wanted to clarify that The LEC has not requested Carlos to resign from G2 nor divest his ownership. Uh, we opened an investigation last week per our LEC rules, which is still ongoing. Some Twitter rando says LEC didn't request, Riot did, and to which Max replies, no, Riot did not request. Now, a lot of this stuff is still up in the air because there's still a lot of he said this, she said that, oh, that's wrong, this is right, that's wrong, this is right. But that's kind of where we're at right now. J&T, did I miss anything?
I guess one thing that we should maybe make clear in the middle there when you're talking about Jacob Wolf and
Mm-hmm.
LEC Wulu, I might
Yep.
have just missed you saying something about it, but that was in relation to G2's Valorant spot with their newly franchised VCT tournament league that has been announced about 3 or 4 days ago. And
Yeah.
like you said, it was sort of in reference to G2's status as their with their franchising spot for their Valorant squad. So this doesn't have anything to do with their league team in terms of what's been going on right now.
Yeah, I apologize. I probably didn't make that very clear. I was kind of just trying to get through this long list of things, so I apologize for that. Um Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to start with this JNT. There's so much controversy around it, and I don't think you or I really want to dodge this conversation just because there's controversy. I think it's perfectly normal to be able to have a conversation about this and just speak our minds. So I say we kind of just do that.
Yeah, I guess for me, one thing that I thought was, I guess here's what I'll say for the first step, we'll call it, is the video gets posted on Twitter. And
Hmm.
I feel like none of this would have even escalated to what it is now if Carlos didn't sort of affiliate G2 with it within this tweet. Because I think it's really important to kind of uh what's the word here? Separate the personal from business side of things. And I kind of understand where Carlos is coming from when he says like I can party with whoever I want. Cool, that's fine, but that's a big difference between involving your esports organization into all of this, specifically talking about, oh, we're celebrating a G2 World Championship for Rainbow Six
Right.
Siege. That is the
Yeah.
big uh-oh and the big error on Carlos's part in my mind, because there's a complete difference between you just going on a night out with your friends, quote unquote. The reason I say friends, quote unquote, is because I feel like there's not a lot of information out there right now between like Carlos and Andrew Tate's relationship per se. Sure, he was at a party with them. Does that mean that they're like lifelong friends and Carlos is agreeing and, siding with him in terms of his personal views? And we don't even need to go down that whole like rat hole of Andrew Tate's personal views. But I feel like the big error from the get go was involving the name and the brand of G2 in the first place, because there's a big difference between you just going on a night out with your friends, quote unquote, versus we're celebrating a G2 World Championship and we brought Andrew Tate with us, a
Yeah,
known
because
bad person.
no, I think you make the good point about it being a G2 thing because they're celebrating the victory. Like, if it's a celebration of a G2 win, you gotta figure Carlos has a pretty damn good say of who can and can't be there, right?
Exactly.
And so, if he just went to the club and Andrew Tate happened to be there, I think there's far less controversy around this, right? And people are quick to be like, "Oh, that's weird," and then move on. But it's like, no, this was a G2 thing, as you mentioned. I want to get your take on the whole him losing his CEO position. Now, apparently he stepped down or whatever is the word, but I mean, we all kind of know what that means, right? Um, it sounds like he didn't actually step down. Now, not that's not for sure, just to be clear, but it sounds like the organization wanted him to step down,
Yeah,
if you know what
I
I'm saying.
yeah, I guess the way that I view it is he was probably asked to step down to kind of uh again, I'm losing the words here, but to sort of gloss over, or not gloss over, but to
Does
do
soften the
some to
blow
yeah,
help?
to do some damage control basically. Like
Mm,
that's how I feel. And I know in his video that he posted on Twitter, one of the points that he made, and I think is completely true, and why this happened with him stepping down, is that he said he would do anything for G2, and that included stepping down. And I think
yep.
it's obviously that Carlos is really, personally, financially, and emotionally involved with G2, where he would make a move like this if he didn't think that it was in the best interest of his team. It's just funny because when I heard of all this, or even when all this drama was popping off, the first thing that I thought of was like, well, what if this was Reggie, for example? Like, if this was Reggie, like oh my god, the fucking
Reggie on that last straw though, right? Like
yeah.
Reggie's had a full year of controversies. Now that doesn't mean that Carlos is without, because I know there has been some things in the past, and I don't even remember all of them to be completely honest. But I know there's been some things where like there was some issues with poaching, kind of. I don't remember the full details of that. Um, then there was the issue with perks where it was like kind of perks could go wherever he wanted, but oh, not really. Like there's some things, and I'm very hazy on the details, so I apologize for that. I guess what I'm saying is, even though there's been some controversies around Carlos in the past, I don't think any of them come as close to Reggie, since Reggie was like bullying players, So I think it's a little bit different, but I think it's a funny point that you bring up. Like, if this was someone else, what happens? And
Yeah,
I think
and
it's a good question to ask,
the
honestly.
main reason why I bring it up is I feel like if this was like Reggie's position, I just feel based on what we've seen evolve over the last couple of years and knowing his personality that he would be super stubborn and fight till his end to keep his CEO spot of the team, whether or not that was good or beneficial for TSM. Because sure, if Reggie was in this scenario and he had to do some damage control and he needed to like sort of fix TSM's reputation, I don't think he would really do what Carlos did. And I guess what I'm
Well,
saying
he
here,
hasn't, right?
well, yeah,
Like, he kinda had that opportunity, sorta.
but I guess
No
what I'm
one was
saying
calling.
here, well, I guess what I'm saying here is I am giving some props to Carlos for stepping down because it definitely, he probably was asked to do some damage control because, G2 was catching a lot of flack from not even just the league community, from all communities. Like there was didn't matter what part of esports you're from, like people were involved in this controversy because,
Yeah.
it's quite major controversy. And while I do think that, like I said in the beginning, Carlos is wrong for doing this because of his affiliation with G2 and because of that specific instance's affiliation with G2, I think he's kind of handled it as well as he could. Yes, understandably, there was that whole situation where he still had that pinned tweet up after he posted his reply, and whether or not that has some sort of reading between the lines of is he sincere about this apology that he put out, because that tweet was still pinned at the time. you
Yeah,
know
I think
eh,
those are totally fair concerns. Like, that does look bad. Come on,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, I think I'm not trying to defend Carlos here, but at some point you do got to wonder, like, he's probably juggling a bunch of things. It could potentially be easy to forget that you have a pinned tweet up. I mean, like I said, I'm not defending him, but I don't think just because he had this one pinned tweet up, like that's just another reason to sort of shit down his mouth. But I guess what I'm saying, and kind of my final thoughts about Carlos in this situation, is he was wrong, but he's doing as well as he can given the situation and, trying to repair G2's image per se.
It seems like it took him way too long to figure out what he had done wrong, and I think that's an issue, and that's why people call into question his integrity, because it's like everyone told him you're screwing up, and then we've all been talking about it. Then he keeps doubling down and doubling down, right? So, and then finally get the apology later, and it's like, dude, it's too late. Everyone was trying to tell you, man.
Yeah, because
So that's an
like you
issue.
said, this drama started, what, 10 days ago? And
Yeah,
the announcement of him, I mean, even the apology didn't come out for like 3 days. And then his announcement of his 8-week suspension was, maybe 5 days after. And then his announcement of stepping down as CEO was almost a week later. So,
yeah.
yeah,
Now, I have a
definitely.
lot of other talking points that we'll get to as well, so I'll just go one by one. I'm just going to ask some questions. Let's start with, did Carlos deserve to lose his CEO position? Let me know if you want me to go first on this or if you want to take it.
Um, I don't think so. I guess it's just interesting to me that they announced the 8-week suspension, and then 2 days later, take it to a full he's stepping down as CEO. I guess to me, I guess that would seem that G2 probably caved under the pressure a little bit. Um, I don't know. I feel like it would have made more sense for you to start that 8-week probation, if we could call it that, and then reevaluate from there, or potentially reevaluate things when the situation isn't as fresh and isn't as emotional, because it's definitely an emotionally charged issue on all sides, because
So,
of who Andrew Tate is, and what went on with Carlos and him, being very emotional and blunt on Twitter. I feel like they probably should have taken a few days to, or not even days, maybe weeks, to sort of reevaluate the situation. Now, am I saying that he doesn't deserve to step down. He doesn't deserve to be CEO at all. No, I'm saying that that decision should have been made later on. That shouldn't have been like a heat of the moment decision because it's a very big decision. And if Carlos does truly believe that stepping down was the best course of action for G2, then yeah, I have to respect that. But at the same time, if it was just all public pressure, you got to do this or we're fucked, then I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with it.
I think the eight. So again, this is speculation. I'm going to be saying that a lot this episode. So get used to it. My guess is they were initially like, we got to do something to show the community that we know that this is not tolerable, that what he did was wrong, and that there needs to be some sort of repercussion. So they say, okay, 8 week suspension, bare minimum, until they have the opportunity to have like a meeting. Like maybe there's like, there's like a CEO, and then there's like a COO, and then there's managers and stuff like that. Or even like a board or something. There's like a board of directors, maybe. Again, I'm not an expert on this stuff. It's probably waiting for them to have a meeting to decide what they want to do, right? Because at the end of the day, it seems very, very possible, and probably even more than possible, that he cost them a Valorant spot, which is apparently being valued around $15 million, right? Um, my take on the does he deserve to lose his CEO spot is from a punitive standpoint, no. Meaning that does hanging out with Andrew Tate make you have to lose your CEO position? Not necessarily. However, from a business side of things, the CEO is supposed to make your company money, not cost them a lot, right?
That's true.
So if you're doing these decisions that cost your business a lot of money, yeah, he kind of does deserve to be let go. Like the CEOs are held to a different standard and they make a fucking lot of money to be held to that standard. And so when you're costing the organization money, I'm not surprised whatsoever. Um, Now that doesn't mean that I don't think there should be any punitive thing, because let's be honest here, like it is still really bad that he's hanging out with Andrew Tate. This guy is he's just an asshole. Like that's no hot take, man. We all know that this guy is scum and is absolutely awful for the esports community, which by the way has a long history of dealing with misogyny. So that's a problem, right? And I'm going to quote Flowers' tweet here because I think Flowers put it really, really good. He said, "If people condemn you for acting like a fool and then you double down before making a fake apology, you're proving yourself to be unfit as a leader. Carlos put his ego above everything else and G2 and cost G2 a lot. It's business, plain and simple. That bullshit is bad for business." I couldn't agree more. Right. So that's where it's like, from a punitive standpoint, I don't think he deserves to lose his job. From a business standpoint, yeah, that was an awful decision and you should know better.
Yeah, I guess I'll begin what I'm about to say with I definitely agree with you in the sense of talking about business, and if you have a person in a position and they're doing things that are harming your business, that should definitely be noted and is important decision making. It is an important decision making tool for your board or whatever, or whoever is making this final decision for him to step down. I guess what I will say to that is Carlos has definitely been one of the better COOs, looking at kind of his whole portfolio in esports per se. Him being a former pro player, starting G2, growing G2 into basically the biggest brand in Europe and one of the biggest brands in the world when it comes to esports. They obviously have tons of titles in other games. Their CSGO roster has been really, really good. They haven't won a major title yet, but they've been consistently at the top. Obviously, this whole situation started with them winning the world championship for Rainbow Six Siege. Maybe it wasn't the world championship, but it was some big tournament. And I guess what I mean by that is I think you have to sort of put things on a scale a little bit. And to go back to one of my previous points, I think that a little bit more time should have been taken before making a decision like this. And while, yes, in the present and maybe for the short term future, having Carlos as the CEO is bad for business. However, moving forward, can they return to that same level, or can the person who fills in for Carlos, or I guess I shouldn't say fills in because it sounds like he's not coming back, but the person who
Yeah.
takes the mantle, if they can do as good of a job as him? Because one thing I think it's important to note is that with the whole Valorant situation, with them having their VCT league or their franchise league, I'm not a Valorant person, so I don't know the whole situation. But one thing I do know about it is that they said that they were going to revise spots after 1 year. So I do distinctly remember hearing the like revisions and teams can be added and removed after the first year. So
Mm.
presumably G2 being the brand and the org that they are, they're going to probably be in the running for a spot next year.
Well,
And
apparently there's also this Ascension tournament as well. Have you heard about this?
no.
I was talking with Pavan about this. He's just a buddy of ours who's a big Valorant fan, but he was saying that they're going to be looking to add a team every year, apparently, with this Ascension tournament. So, like, all like the tier two, so all the teams that didn't make it into franchising or whatever you want to call it, um, teams can still fight in some Ascension tournament to make a spot in the following team. And I think he was saying that they're going to have the league grow one team every year. Now, don't quote me on that. I might be getting that wrong, but that was what I was getting from the conversation. If that's the case, I think that's interesting because I think the point that you're making here is correct. That like G2 could still get into this league, right? And it's probably from you probably still need approval from Riot, and Riot is probably not going to approve if Carlos is still there. Um, that's speculation, but that I mean, if they didn't accept them this time because of the controversy, who's to say that's not going to happen again if they win this Ascension tournament or whatever, right?
Yeah, potentially, and I think that's a fair point. And if it was a situation where Riot was maybe telling them, like, "Hey, if Carlos is still here, like, we're not even going to consider you," then yes, maybe that was a necessary action that they needed to take, forcing him to step down and bring in a new person. Hopefully, that that new person can get G2 to where they need to be to get into this Valorant league or whatever. But like I said, I think the important thing to uh, the important thing to discuss here is the short term future versus the long term future. And G2 is a very respected and well run organization, and if they feel that they have the right person to replace him as CEO, then I think that's a perfectly fine decision that they made. And it's just going to be, I think, a little bit telling over the next couple of years what sort of happens and how G2 either grows or shrinks from this whole situation. And it'll kind
Yeah.
of it'll paint a better picture in terms of did they make the right decision.
Yeah, and you're already kind of helping me segue into one of my next questions for you, which is like, what does this mean for G2 League of Legends, right? Because I think everyone, whether you, a lot, I know this is, I'm not the only one to say this, but everyone will agree, or the solid majority of people will agree, that G2 League of Legends isn't what it is today without Carlos, right? That's no hot take.
Mhm.
And so you got to wonder, what does it mean for G2 League of Legends going forward, right? Like, are they going to be able to build these teams the way, I mean, they've had a lot of success, man. Been the best Western team for some time now. So you have to wonder who's taking over that spot and are they able to replicate what Carlos did? That's a really important question to ask because we've seen in esports in the past where like some people take over and don't exactly know what they're doing. I mean, you got to point to CLG.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah, but don't you though? Like, don't you have to point to CLG because you got to plan for worst case scenario. When you ask me what would be the worst case scenario, I'm like CLG instantly. And I'm not saying that G2 is going to become CLG, but boy, isn't that a fun conversation to have, JNT?
Yeah.
This whole year, we had the conversation of is TSM the new CLG? Now, of course, I'm just memeing and I'm getting way far ahead of myself here, but it'll be funny if we're asking ourselves, is G2 the next CLG in, I don't know, what, 4 months or whatever it is? That would be funny. Well, actually, it would be funny and sad when you think about it.
Yeah, I think the main thing in terms of how this affects G2 League of Legends is Carlos clearly has favoritism towards their league team and their league operations. And that should come at no surprise, him being a former professional league player and building the organization from the ground up, starting with their League of Legends team, because that was the first major move that they made when I think they were, I don't know if they began, no, they did. They begun in the Challenger Series in EU as G2. I think he bought the players from I think Mouse at the time was had perks on that team before they acquired that team. But my point here is the next person who comes in and fills the shoes, are they going to have that same effort, passion towards the league team as Carlos did, or are they going to be more wanting to spread the resources wide between whatever game franchise we're talking about here, like obviously G2's league team, they pay top dollar for the best players. Like look at their rosters over the last 4 or 5 years. Pretty much since season 8, they've been a top team in the league, probably paying some of the highest salaries for their team. And like I said, you got to wonder, will the next person share that same vision with putting the primary focus of G2's resources? I'm assuming here, like I said, based off the performance and the players that are on their team and what we think they might be worth, is that next person going to have that same valuation, or are they going to think, oh, it's maybe more important to put some more focus into our CS:GO team because they haven't won their major title yet, or do we need to start spreading out to other esports titles or whatever? So I think unless G2 has some like you said, just historic downfall of, okay, well, now players might not want to come here because Carlos was like a big tool for, that, or if G2 suddenly gets bad again, like, well, who's going to be the guy who wants to make those big money moves to potentially get that team back to the promised land? Now, I think it's highly unlikely, just because of the players that are on G2 right now. If they're going to Worlds, they're going to probably perform well at Worlds, and they're probably going to continue to be a good team for the next 2 to 3 years, as long as they have Caps on their team. Because if Caps is on your team, you're going to bring in a lot of other players, no matter what the situation is. But
That is true. And
but
Yankos as well, right?
true. But I mean, he's probably going to the retirement home soon, because that guy's getting
Yeah.
fucking old.
Okay.
But if for whatever reason G2 becomes suddenly dog shit, is that CEO going to have that same, energy, passion, and funding to just build that next team? Or are they just going to turn into like, okay, now we go budget mode and see if we can make playoffs?
And everyone's going to point to that CEO. Regardless of what happens, everyone's going to point to the CEO, which I think that's normal for a CEO, honestly. You have a
Yeah.
lot of pressure on you. You're making all the decisions. So, but yeah, if things go bad, it's almost like you can't win if you get that job. I mean, you win because you probably make bank and because you make a name for yourself as being the CEO of G2, but like, can you get better than what they've been? Maybe you got to win worlds.
Yeah.
That's a tough ask, right?
Mhm.
So that's one thing. I wanted to get to the question of, should he be blacklisted from Riot, because this idea has been thrown around that he is blacklisted, and some people are saying he's not blacklisted. I don't think there's anything clear cut yet that we know. So maybe we'll be talking about this next year. But as of right now, I don't think there's anything for sure saying that Riot has blacklisted him. Um, when I heard the idea of blacklisted being thrown around, I was like, what does that really mean? Because you know how, like, when people say like you're permabanned and then they're like, oh, they're lifting the permaban, and it's like, well, then it wasn't a permaban. Like, what does blacklisted mean?
At
Can
Tyler
you
one.
lift the can you yeah, like, can you lift the blacklist? For me, I hope that he is not blacklisted. I like Look, the guy made a mistake here, but when people bring up cancel culture, I think that's what they're talking about when someone is permanently canceled, rather than being able to show that they've learned from the whatever they did and being able to, like, let's put it this way. Riot has had a long history of having issues with discrimination when it comes to women in gaming, right? Can we not say that Riot has learned from their mistakes and they try to improve the space for? That's the reason to me why they're not allowing G2 in the space, right? Is because they're trying to say, look,
A
we've
little bit
had a
ironic,
bad.
but it's,
Of course, it
everyone.
is ironic.
Yeah.
No, it is ironic, and a lot of people have called out Riot for being like, "Oh, you're one to talk," right? But it's like, well, I mean, at least if you ask me, at least they're doing better, right? Like, you don't, just because they used to be a misogynistic piece of shit company doesn't mean they should just continue to be that, right? They showed that they can change. So if Riot can show that they can change, shouldn't Carlos get that same opportunity? Uh,
I
that's just the way I look at it. But
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I don't think he should be blacklisted. And to one of my previous points, I definitely think the good outweighs the bad in terms of what Carlos has done for European League of Legends. And then to that point, Western League of Legends versus Eastern League of Legends, because for so long there was a question of, can the West even compete with the East? And G2 was the first team and the first org to even put that thought into people's minds back in season 8 when they beat RNG in the quarterfinals. Then obviously they went on a big run with their Perks Caps roster in season 9, season 10. So I definitely think he should still be around. I don't want to keep harping on the same point, but I just think that this whole decision was done a bit too quickly.
um, I don't know if I'm there with that. Wait, well, from who are you talking about? From Riot side of things, or from the G2 side of things, where they let him go too quickly?
I think all of the above. I think
I'm gonna defend.
I understand it from Riot's perspective, because they had just announced the Valorant franchise league, or were
Mhm.
planning on announcing it right before, or right as this drama was coming out. So I definitely understand it from Riot's perspective, and in the same sense we're
Me too.
talking about, is having Carlos as a CEO bad for business? Well, it's bad for business for Riot if they're allowing G2 into this franchise league after this whole thing is going on. So
Absolutely.
while I disagree with it, I completely understand it. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, it totally makes sense from Riot's end to do what they're doing. And I would probably do the same thing if I was in their position, because as we've said before on this point many times, it's business, and business is about money, and you need to make as much money as possible. And will that happen, adding a very controversial team to the league? Probably not. So don't get me wrong, I completely understand it, and I'd be in the same position that they are. But from me sitting in this chair right now, not having any affiliation with anybody here involved, I still want Carlos to be in the scene.
I want to be clear on where I fall on this. I absolutely think there should still be repercussions for Carlos. I just don't think they should be permanent. That's where I get with the blacklist thing. Like, if he comes back in 5, 10 years or whatever, and doesn't have any incidents of like misogyny or anything like that, like, I think that's plenty of time for someone to learn about what they've done and, I don't know, just become a better person. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's true. Like, I think that that's more than normal. Now, to defend, because I want to defend Riot a little bit here, because I think a lot of people were like, I can't believe Riot wouldn't let them in the league or whatever just because of one event. And it's like, to me, guys, the issues of gender discrimination in esports have been around, I don't
Since its
know, JP,
inception.
forever. Yeah, forever. And Riot has been a big culprit of that. To me, I think what this shows is finally they're looking to make that change. Right? You can Something has to be done for things to change, right? You can't just be like, "Oh, whatever, it's fine," and then just let things go on as normal. Because if you're a woman in the space, you gotta be going, "You're kidding me, man." Again, people are just getting away with it and there's no repercussions for what is obviously like some misogynistic actions, if you will. Like, I don't know, man. I have a lot of respect for Riot being like, look, yes, maybe we haven't been the best company for this in the past, but that doesn't mean we can't try to improve and become a better company for it moving forward. And with starting a new esport, right, with VCT starting like the franchise or whatever, it's time to root that shit out because it's getting old. And I saw so many tweets, so many about how it's just virtue signaling and people don't really believe this stuff and they're just saying it to look good. And it's like, no, man, people are just fucking sick and tired of the discrimination in esports. It's that simple. It's that simple. It's fucking old. It's not uh virtue signaling. It's so it goes far beyond that, man. So I think that it's totally normal for me to see why G2 didn't get let into VCT, especially since there is like so many freaking orgs that are like, I don't know. I just think they're like respectable orgs that applied to get into this stuff, right? Like, there were so many that didn't get in. So I'm not surprised that G2 didn't get in when it's like, we could go after this hot potato, or we could just take another top tier esports org. Done deal, you know?
Yeah.
So that's where I look at it anyway.
I Like I said, I definitely understand, Riot's decision making and everything, and that's not what I'm questioning. I just think in G2's case, it's just unfortunate they're sort of guilty by association here.
Yeah. And I say all of this, guys. I should just admit my biases as well. I have never been a fan of Carlos. Never. Not even a little bit. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but I'm just being honest from where I'm coming from. Not a Carlos fan. I'm just not. So I think it's important to, I don't know, acknowledge bias, I suppose. But those are my thoughts. I think he deserves some punishment. I don't know what the punishment is. By the way, the 8 weeks thing, that I don't think was enough because everyone looked at that and was like, oh, 8 weeks vacation, G2 vacation XD, and brought back all the vacation memes. Um, I don't know what a good punishment would have been. Um,
Like,
but anyways, I don't get paid to figure that out, I guess.
yeah, yeah, I don't want to go down the same point here, but when after 8 weeks passed, then that decision should have been made, or at some point, even if 8 weeks is the correct or incorrect amount of time, that can either be extended or reduced. Like, it's not. This is a
Maybe though,
fluid situation.
can I throw out a I want to throw something out here. Maybe, and this is again just maybe there was a sponsorship deal that is in the making that they need to know now. Like, look, if this dude's in, we're out.
Yeah,
You know,
maybe.
like that's possible. That's possible.
And
We have nothing to suggest that so far, but it is possible.
once again, pure speculation, but maybe they thought that this was the best move for them to get into the VCT franchise league. Like, maybe they thought, like, this is our latch. They're like, hey, maybe it looks like we're not going to get in. Hey, last ditch effort. Let's, you're stepping down. Let's try to get in. So, I mean, we don't know, but
Yeah. Anyways, I don't think this stuff is done. I think there's still a lot more to be leaked. As of now, we gave you guys pretty much everything we know, and I mean, we even mentioned all the stuff that is speculation as well. Our thoughts could change on this stuff, right? Like, more stuff could come out, and I could be like, "Oh, that's not what I thought it was. I actually changed my mind." And if we do, we will talk about it next week. That's Yeah, there's always more stuff to be leaked when in esports. That's one thing I've learned is that the leaks never stop. A perfect example of that is well, people bringing up shit from Reggie from like a decade ago, right? Like shit on the internet lasts forever. So we'll see if there's more stuff to be leaked. Anything else on it, JNT, or are you ready to move on?
I guess maybe just because since you mentioned the TSM point, that did remind me of something. And like I said, I'm not trying to utilize what I'm about to say here to defend Carlos because I think he was, this is like a completely fucked situation that shouldn't even happen. But one thing that I think is important to distinguish between the TSM Reggie stuff and the G2 Carlos stuff in terms of former players or employees coming out to show support for their CEO, I think there's an obvious clear distinction between the two where in TSM's case, it was a lot of old former, and when I say former, I mean like 5, 6 plus years ago, former players and employees who came out to support Reggie versus a lot of the people that were condemning him were very recent TSM former players, staff and whatnot. And I think in the case of G2 here, Carlos is, from what I've seen on Twitter, received a ton of support from current players, current staff. I mean, I don't, his ex-wife or whatever, who he has a child with,
Yeah.
I think that is important information to distinguish between the two and also kind of show, like I said, I'm not trying to use this as a defense here, but maybe, I don't know. I don't want to go down this whole thing again, but if he was in the right or wrong, but I just think that's an important distinction to make because if I know one thing, Reggie is fucked in the head. And I don't know if Carlos is fucked in the head. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but I know one thing, Reggie's on that list.
Yeah, the situations are different. And like I said, we'll see if we get some updates and maybe we'll be talking about next week. So that's it for that for now. Now, before we move on to the next topic, JNT and I owe you guys a massive thank you. Last week was our 100th episode, and it was our best episode yet. And let's be honest, the reason is because of you guys. We keep telling you guys that you guys commenting and liking and subscribing, which I know that's nothing new. Creators tell people to do that all the time, but it's making a massive fucking difference, guys. So please, if you're enjoying the content, please keep doing that. My God, is it helping? Um, we've got a lot of new viewers lately, and so just welcome you guys all to the channel. And we do these episodes weekly. Now, with that said, Worlds gets a little funky. I we don't know exactly what our world schedule is going to be because I'm going to be in New York with J&T during groups, maybe quarters. I don't know about that yet, but we don't know when episodes are going to be because the world schedule is wonky. It's different locations, so I don't know what setup I'm going to have. All I can tell you guys is we're going to have to figure it out as we go. So as of right now, when's our next episode, J&T?
October the 4th, which will
October the
be
4th.
right after play-ins ends. It will be the last day of play-ins, the knockout stage. So at that time, we'll know what are the play-in teams that make it out of play-ins and get to the group stage. We're going to know what the finalized groups are. And that will obviously, that'll be the information we need to kind of give a better breakdown of the world's main stage groups. Because at the current
Yeah.
moment, there's only 3 teams in each group. And while it's likely that we know what the groups are going to be if all 4 major regions make it out of the group, we'll get into the play-ins in a sec here, but there's some wonky situations with a few of the teams, some that are potentially expected to make it out, and we'll have to see, if that affects their performances and if they get out or not. So
Yeah, so current plan is to go live literally the day of the last day of play-ins. That we'll see if that is subject to change, but that's the current plan for now. And if you guys want to catch us live, it's twitch.tv/Clown Fiesta Podcast. And of course, you can find us on all the platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so on and so forth, all the anchor supported podcast platforms. So, okay, let's get into play-ins now. Group stage, play-in group stage starting very shortly. When was that starting? Like 3 days from now or
Thursday,
something?
Thursday, I
Thursday?
think the
Okay.
29th. Is that Thursday?
Um,
I think it
yes,
is.
that is
Okay,
Thursday,
then it's Thursday.
and we don't have to watch it at like 4 in the goddamn morning.
Yeah, thank
This is
God.
awesome. First time in ever. Okay, so these play-ins rather, this has to be the most competitive the groups have ever been, right? For play-ins?
Well, Group A definitely, not Group B.
Well, I mean, Group B, there's still 3 major regions in there, right? And there's only 2 teams from each group that can get out, correct?
Yeah, I guess when you said is this going to be the most competitive playing stage, I think in the case of Group A, most definitely. But Group B, I mean,
Let me reword it then. Let's say for the top teams then, because usually it's like fairly obvious the top teams that are going to get out. But I think no matter what, there has to be one major region that's pretty disappointed this play-ins, right?
most likely.
Because not all five of DRX, RNG, Mad Lions, Fnatic, NEG can get out. And there's even a word like I'm pretty sure DFM they made it out last year, right? I realize different circumstances, but they made it out.
Yep, they did.
And BYG, I don't
Wait,
think
did
that
they?
they're I don't think they're free by any chance.
Wait, I don't think that DFM made it out actually.
I thought they did. I thought they even beat Cloud9 in a tiebreaker. Am I thinking of a different team?
Um, I don't think they made it out, but
I- you check it out real quick.
they
I
did
thought
not.
that
They did not make it out. Wait, did they?
who beat Cloud9 in that
Oh,
tiebreaker
they did
last.
make it out. Yeah, you're right. My bad. They did make it out. They
Isn't
did.
that crazy that might be the first time that I remembered something and J&T didn't.
That's
I'm
maybe.
always the one to forget, and J&T's like, "No, you idiot. This is what happened." And I'm like, "Oh, sorry." It's nice to be right for once. That's a big W for me. Okay, let's just start J&T. Who's the most likely to get out in Group A and Group B? Who's your best? Who's your pick?
I
Who's your
mean,
best team?
it's funny because when it came to Group A, if I had to pick, let me check my watch. 5 days ago, I probably would have picked Fnatic. However, I'll
Hmm.
check the watch right now, and we'll get into this in a sec here. But Fnatic, they're in a bit of an interesting situation because 2 days ago, we found out that Upset and Hillisang had COVID, and that, sure, they left it very vague. That I was like, oh, we're hoping that we're gonna, they'll recover well and that they're gonna get to Mexico and we're gonna be ready for plans. But nope. Today we found out that Fnatic is going to be using an emergency bot lane, which includes two players from their respective regional league team. I don't know what regional league they're in, but a familiar face, Bean, who replaced Upset at last year's Worlds, is going to be playing AD carry. And their new support, I literally didn't even write his damn name down. That's how forgettable this guy is. Do you have his name?
Rux? Is it Rux?
Sure.
1 second, please. I will get this. Um, I can't find it. Oh, it is Rux.
Okay.
RHUCKZ for the Canadians and English people out there. It
Okay.
is a Z.
Okay, but
Um,
Fnatic emergency bot lane, they're having problems at Worlds once again.
so my biggest issue isn't so much that it's two players being replaced, which by the way is a big deal, but like it's Hillisang, no? Like, isn't that a big issue? Like, don't get me wrong, that guy runs it down sometimes, but also that guy has been such a huge playmaker for Fnatic ever since he's been there. That's my biggest worry for Fnatic. But then you could also make the argument that, well, EG, they got their problems without having Danny. Like, sure, Cowrie looked fine in the small amount that we did see him, but how many times have we seen EG run the playbook of let's just get Danny really ahead and let him go nuts? Well, Danny ain't there to go nuts. So I think that there's it's fair to be skeptic about both of these teams, honestly. And so while I'm still not predicting it, I could see a world where neither one of these teams get the first spot. I could see it happening. Again, not predicting it. I'm going to go EG, but I'm very nervous about this because obviously, again, Danny, like I hope that AD carry is a spot that you can plug someone in and they look fine. And I think there's totally a world where that happens, which is why I'm still predicting EG. But I can't pretend I feel comfortable about it. Danny's been one of their best players all year long. And up until, like, I know he didn't look that great in playoffs, but we all know that that's when he started to struggle with mental health issues. Because at the start of summer and in spring, Danny was an absolute monster. So I can't just forget, you know? It's
Mm.
hard for me to forget, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to, it's hard to say because I think DFM has a real chance of getting the first seed in this group. And that's primarily because of the situation that Fnatic and EG are in, missing some of their star players. Because Upset and Hillisang were kind of they were pretty much the only players on Fnatic, or I guess I shouldn't say the only. How do I word this correctly? They were the players on Fnatic that were struggling the least when Fnatic was struggling in the LEC. When Fnatic was struggling in the LEC, we saw Razork heavily underperforming. Humanoid wasn't, as good as he's been, specifically in 2011 or 2021 on Mad Lions, because Humanoid was a beast. But we didn't
Yeah,
really
true.
see that same star potential when they were struggling. And Wonder, I think Wonder he's still a really good player. I don't think he's the same Wonder that he was on G2. I think he's like maybe a notch below that. So maybe he went from like being an A player to a B player. I mean, that's still a really good player. But Upset and Hylissang are they're the motor of Fnatic. You know, Hylissang, for better or for worse, is making plays for Fnatic and is usually the one that is winning or losing them the game. I would say in international tournaments, more often winning than losing because, you know, to me, Hylissang he's just a great player at the World Championship. He always seems to turn it on at the right time. His wide champion pool is always seeming to be very useful in these kinds of situations, and I think that's what they're going to miss the most is Hylissang's playmaking and the amount of tools that he has in his toolbox for Fnatic to do whatever the fuck they want. And I think they're going to be pigeonholed a little bit with a completely different bot lane. You know, last year was a bit of a different situation because you were only missing Upset and you still had Hylissang, but now you don't have either of them. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a lot more difficult for Fnatic to make it out of this group. Sorry, I shouldn't say make it out of the group. Make it out as the number 1 seed in this group. And I think I'll still roll with EG, although I do think that DFM has a real shot of getting out number 1 in this group because, I mean, you know, the carries of DFM are still here. Yeah, sure, Arya went to the LCK this year, but they still got a pretty good mid in Yarong, who was a former, I want to say he was a former Bro player, but maybe he wasn't on Bro.
I remembered one thing this episode. You can't ask me to remember anything else. That's the rules.
I gotta check
So,
real quick.
um, I kind of just glossed over the Upset thing, which I
He was on
honestly just
Bro.
shouldn't have. I shouldn't have, honestly. Like you mentioned, or you mentioned how like it's both of them in the bot lane, and you're absolutely right on that. Right, like these guys are definitely two really important pieces for Fnatic. However, I will say that in their playoff run, all of the talk was about how Razorg looked so much better. And to me, as this when they were struggling in the middle of the season, that's where it definitely looked rough. Razorg did not have such a good playoff, and the fact that he started to perform so much better, and then we saw Fnatic start to, well, I mean, they just started to climb, right? They were like barely sitting in playoffs, and then they made playoffs, and then they went on this run. A lot of that was attributed to, of course, everyone on the lineup, but in big part to Razork starting to look like himself again. And so you still have that piece, and so I can't ignore that. And mind you, I looked at his match list and I saw he's mostly two tricking Poppy and Trundle. I don't really care, man. Those are good champions. So if he plays good champions and performs well on them, I don't care that he only plays two champions. I think that that's fine. I don't think that maybe Poppy would get some bans, but I don't think Trundle is normally banned that heavily.
Yeah, and he's actually getting some.
Correct me if I'm wrong
He's
on
getting
that.
some pretty big nerfs. Coming up to Worlds. I mean, they're
Ooh,
not like
that
huge
is
nerfs,
interesting.
but it's to his W, which is one of his most important abilities, especially in the jungle.
For clearing, yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't consider that. So
Well,
that is
and for
something.
fighting because they're usually kind of going to for
Skirmishing.
the lethal tempo
Yeah.
uh rune tree now instead of like a phase rush or a PTA or even an aftershock we were seeing when it was like full tank trundle. But to the Razork point, definitely he has been looking much better than he was in sort of the back half of the spring split and sort of the beginning of the summer split. But I will say I think there's some really strong junglers in Group A, specifically from obviously EG and Inspired, but also Detonation Focus Me and Steel. He's pretty much their second or third longest tenured player behind Utapon and Evi, and he's always been a really strong jungler at Worlds. He does seem to be more of a carry jungler. So I think that'll just be a pretty interesting dynamic if we do see sort of like a Poppy, Trundle, Sejuani type meta. If Steel is going to be whipping out some of these other picks, I know Hecarim is a jungler that's been really high on a lot of people's lists so far in terms of pro players talking about what they think the meta is going to be like and stuff in Champions Queue because that champ is permanently banned in every Champions Queue game that I've seen. So I think while Razork has been looking a lot better, I think that he's definitely going to have his work cut out for him if they want to get first seed in the group, because I think it's most likely that Fnatic, EG, and DFM are going to be competing for that number 1 spot.
Fair points. I yeah, can't fault you for any of that. Something else I wanted to get to. I'm not really remembering. Should we just hop over to the other side of the let's hop over to the other group then.
Yep, we
Um
got Group B, which is pretty banger group. DRX and RNG, obviously the 4th seeds from the LCK and the LPL. The Mad Lions, that additional seed from Europe that was because the not the TCL, the LCL was not sending a representative. That was the Russian league. But don't forget Mr. Buffalo over there, the Saigon
yeah.
Buffalo. They are going to be at Worlds. They got all their visas straightened out. I guess I shouldn't say
Yeah,
all
all
of
the
them.
visas are good, right? No?
All of
Right?
their starting players have. I know that in one of their more recent tweets, they said that Froggy and a coach hadn't secured their visa. They updated a couple days ago saying Froggy got his visa. Froggy's their mid laner. However, they didn't explicitly say that that coach also got their visa. So
Okay.
what we know for sure is all five of their starting players are going to be there, which is the most important part, obviously, because you can still do coaching remotely, although it's not always the same because you're not going to be there in the room with the players, and it makes for a worse dynamic in terms of speaking to players individually. But they're going to be there, which is the most important part. I was worried once again that we were going to have these visa issues that were going to disrupt the tournament, specifically coming from the VCS, because it's been a very problematic region for the last 2 years. I've been saying it for the
Yeah.
last 2 years. Riot needs to get their shit together when it comes to the VCS, because if there were going to be visa issues and they weren't going to be able to come, or they were going to be using like 3/5 of their roster was going to be emergency substitutes, that would have been a shit situation.
So, does this now mean that all of the players for the tournament all have their visas, or we still don't know about groups teams, but it doesn't matter because they're not playing yet?
Yeah,
Do we know
well,
any of that?
what I have, because like I said, VCS and visas, Gigabyte Marines, they all have their visas. So
Okay.
they've already auto qualified to the main stage because they're the number one seed out of the VCS. And from what I've seen on Twitter, there's been no other visa problems for other teams.
Okay.
So
This
I
is good.
think all the players are going to be there for sure. Minus
Oh,
Upset and
that's
Hill is
good.
saying, and because
Right.
that would, we kind of find that out today that Fnatic was
Oh,
using
that
their
was the other
emergency bot
thing.
lane.
That was the other thing that I was going to say before that I forgot to mention was like we don't really know how long they're out for, right? Like, what if they just miss one day?
Yeah,
Upset and
I mean,
Hillison come back and then they just run the fucking group after. Like that's there's a world where that happens, right?
it's I'm presumably the minute that they're able to travel, they're going to travel.
Now, of
However,
course, they haven't been able to scrim, right? So
yeah,
that's there's still that.
yeah. I mean, they haven't been scrimming with the team, and sure, once they test negative, it might not be a simple okay, now you're free to go. There might have to be some sort of quarantining period. So I think it's unlikely that they'll be in the play-in group stage, because I think they hold the group stages over the course of the first 3 days, and the knockout stages are the fourth and fifth days. So maybe they get
Gotcha.
there for knockouts. If they get out of play-ins, it could be likely that they get there for the main stage groups, but you know they got to make it out first.
Okay. Sorry to bring us back to Group A. I just remembered what I was trying to say before. Now, back to Group B. For me, and I don't think I'm alone in this. Stop me if I'm wrong. I think RNG seems like the big favorite here. No,
Yep.
like I've heard good
Yep.
things about DRX, and I still don't think you can completely sleep on Mad. But RNG is still scary, man. Like I don't know, man. I think that that team is still really, really good. I look at their lineup. The only guy I don't really know about is Breathe
Yeah. I
because they
mean,
replaced Bin, right?
yeah,
Not too
they
long
did like a
ago.
little trade after they won MSI, which was like, when have we ever seen that before? A team that wins MSI and makes a roster change. And
That is weird, eh?
I mean,
That
they
is
obviously
so
did it for
strange.
a reason. And while RNG didn't necessarily repeat that same success in the summer split, obviously they're the fourth seed, and teams like JDG, EDG, and Top Esports are 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
I still think that people believe, with the overall strength of the LPL, that RNG is still a really good team. It's just that, hey, they might not they weren't as good as Top Esports, EDG, or JDG. Well, guess what? Those teams are also really fucking good, and that doesn't mean RNG is any worse than them. I mean, a little bit worse because they're fourth, but they're not some like huge level below.
And the thing is, I know that this is supposed to be play-in discussion, but like, would we be surprised if we saw RNG just get out of groups as well and make a run for the actual championship? No, they just won MSI.
Yeah.
So, like, and I don't think we've ever had a play-in team that we thought, okay, that team could win everything. Have we had that?
Um, I don't know. I'm trying to think
And
of a
that's kind of what I
random.
meant earlier when I meant like the most competitive. I guess what I should have said was like we have the best teams that we've ever had in play-ins, perhaps.
Maybe in terms of their ceiling for sure,
Yeah.
because if I guess talking about teams and their ceilings, we want to talk about Mad Lions. This is a team where
I
majority of the
had them
summer
pegged to
split,
win,
yeah,
man.
the
I
majority of
thought
the
they were gonna
summer split,
win.
they look like the best team by far until they sort of struggled at the end of the regular season. I think they lost like 4 out of their last 7 games and kind of allowed G2 and Rogue to catch up to them. Rogue, I think, ended up leapfrogging them right at the end of the season in terms of standings. And then Mad Lions, They kind of crashed and burned out of playoffs, lost both of their best of fives. Yes, they didn't end up going to Worlds because of the situation with the LCL not getting a representative this year. But you can't deny that if Mad figures it out, this is a team that is on paper just as good, if not potentially better, than G2 and Rogue.
Yeah, I have to confess
Big
something
if
here
though.
because I forgot to tweet it out, but I remember I meant to tweet before playoffs started how Mad Lions was this team that I thought was going to take it all, and I was going to list my reasons. And just because I didn't make the tweet, I don't think means I should not avoid taking the L on this one. Like, I think that's one that I gotta own. I was so confident, and I don't know. Maybe it's because I stopped watching them. That's the only thing that I could come up with. I
I
stopped
mean,
watching them.
they definitely didn't look good. So
You know what's funny though? His Mark mentioned this on Hotline League tonight, and he was saying like it would be awesome if somehow Mad Lions and EG ended up meeting each other because 4 of the 5 players were all pro for both teams. I think that would be like a hella great storyline. And he mentioned how like, well, I don't know if I think you might have been watching it last night. Jojo Pyun's like dunking on Niski in Champions Queue, mind you, it's one day, but still. Um, I think that that would be like such a fun matchup, and I kind of want it to happen. Not gonna lie,
I mean, it's definitely likely. So
I want it to happen, but then I would want both of those teams to win. So maybe I don't want it to happen. I don't know, but
mhm.
anyways, I don't think people can just sleep on Mad Lions. I still think that that roster is really good. I think it's fair to acknowledge that Armut is not what we are used to seeing out of him from years past. That doesn't mean a guy can't find it when Worlds comes around. There are some guys. The best example I think is Jensen, where like when games get really important, some guys just turn it on, and maybe that's Armut. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah,
Apparently not in playoffs though.
the last thing I'll say about Mad Lions is regardless of their collapse at the end of summer split, when the team was playing really, really well, it was because of the mid jungle duo of Niski and Elyoya. And I think that their power level is probably going to be, how far Mad Lions goes in this tournament. If Niski and Elyoya are performing like a top mid jungle duo, which they have all the potential in the world to be, and we've even seen it in the summer
Hmm.
split, I think that
Yep.
this is a team that definitely can make it out of plans. And yeah, while it's going to be difficult for them to make it first in this group and even second potentially because we kind of touched on it very briefly at the beginning, but like we shouldn't sleep on DRX. I know we were really talking up
Yeah.
RNG because they're the fourth seed from the LPL. LPL is a strong region. Don't sleep on the LCK either. Like DRX is a really, really good team. They have some, insane players in Pioshik and Deft. Obviously, their other players aren't as well versed on the international stage. I mean, Barrel's world champion, but he's not that same Barrel. But, you can't just sweep DRX under the rug here because it's very likely that they're going to be battling RNG for that first seed. And one thing that makes playing super exciting is it's one round robin, a best of one. So every match is that much more important. If DRX goes out and beat RNG, like that will make them that makes them a huge favorite to get out first. And that's obviously going to be the most important matchup. And in Mad Lions' case, those two matchups against DRX and RNG are where they're going to be able to make it out first, presumably because they're going to beat the teams that are below them.
Okay, quick recap. Who do you got going 1, 2, 3 in groups A and B?
Well, why are we okay? What's the 3 relevance here? Because only 2
Well,
make it
doesn't
out.
three ends up playing? Yeah, but they end up playing 2 in the other group,
Well,
right?
three plays 4 from the same group, and then 3 plays the opposite
Oh,
2.
you've told me this before, and I get this wrong every time. This isn't going to be the last time. You're going to have to correct me on this, JT. So that's
Mhm.
why I was saying 1, 2, 3, because in my head, 1 moves on, and then 2 plays 3. But anyways,
Okay,
let's do 1, 2, 3, 4 then.
okay. Well, if I had to pick Group A right now, I would pick EG1, DFM
Okay.
2, Fnatic 3, BYG 4, and
Hmm.
therefore Fnatic would play BYG. I would pick Fnatic. BYG would be out. And now, if I move over to my Group B, I would have
So
RNG
wait, you
1.
got who do you got? Who are the 2 teams you got moving on from the group?
Well, they don't move on. Only the first seed makes it out right
No,
away.
but making it to the group to groups.
Okay, well, let me finish my point here because I was gonna
Okay,
just give
sorry.
you my
Go ahead.
quick best of. So, like I said, EG1, DFM2, Fnatic 3, BYG 4. Fnatic beats BYG. Bye bye BYG. Group B,
Okay.
I have RNG 1, DRX 2, Mad Lions 3, Saigon Buffalo 4. Mad Lions beats Saigon Buffalo. Saigon Buffalo gone. Then that would be EG gets out of the group and goes to main stage. RNG gets out of the group, goes to main stage. Then Fnatic would play DRX, and Mad Lions would play DFM. So in Fnatic versus DRX, bye bye Fnatic, DRX makes it through. Mad Lions versus DFM, bye bye DFM, Mad Lions makes it through.
I'm not going that deep with all that stuff. I get how the thing works, but I'm not going that far with it. For me, I'm taking EG. I am gonna give Fnatic the second spot though. I either one, their players come back and I think that they can put out the fire, or two, I just don't think that I think their top side can handle it. That's honestly what I think. So I'm still gonna give them the two spot in their group. Then I'm gonna go DFM and then BYG, which I think is what you had as well, or no? Like, did you have BYG 4?
Yep.
Yeah, and then from Group B side, I am going to go RNG. Then I I kind of want to go Mad Lions too,
You can do
actually.
it if you want.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Mad Lions 2, DRX 3, and then Saigon Buffalo 4. But yeah, I pretty much just have RNG, Mad, EG, Fnatic making, or no, not making it because they play each other. So I'll have RNG, DRX moving on, and then I'll have EG and Fnatic moving on.
So that means you think that Fnatic would beat Mad Lions in a best of five,
Yes, I do.
even with the emergency bot lane situation.
Well, I don't know,
Well,
man.
I'm just saying because if we're playing out this scenario, then that if you have Fnatic as the second seed
Yeah, I
after
keep
groups, and
convincing
then
myself that everything's gonna be fine by the time that these series come around, but I shouldn't because we don't know that for sure, right?
well,
And then
not
there's
not
also the issue of scrims and who like scrims matter, right? They haven't been able to scrim, so
yeah.
those are fair concerns.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see because Fnatic they looked pretty horrible last year with the situation that happened. So I maybe it's like a bit
Last
troll
year was
to.
also a little bit of a different animal though because the whole team was mental boom. Now maybe
I
that's
mean,
happening again this
yeah.
year,
Well,
but
why
maybe not.
why would you not mental boom a little bit if your starting bot lane, who is probably who are two of the best players on your team, can't come to Worlds because they have COVID, and now you're playing with an emergency bot lane, and it's a bit of a shit situation. Let's go Bean. I mean, Bean's
Because
sick.
this
I like
time
Bean,
because
but
this time
I
you
think
don't
he's
have
gonna get
Adam
shit
who's
on.
full Adam went full tilt mode last year. So
That's
that would
true.
be the reason as to why you don't boom this hard. But anyways, that should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Shout out Psycho Manders for the first time chat. I think I know who that is.
Yeah.
Um, okay, are we good to move on?
Yeah.
Okay, Worlds 2022 topics. Where are we starting with this, Jinter?
Yeah. So the World Song came out on like Tuesday last week or something. Man, I'm not gonna beat around the bush here. It fucking blew chunks, man. Like
Okay, but why didn't you like it though? You don't like the song, you don't like the video, both?
I like the song. Um,
Okay.
but I mean, I'll echo a lot of the sentiments from the community about how the song doesn't fit with the music, like with the video at all, and it doesn't. I'll also say that we are kind of accustomed to these very climactic middle and end of these world song where like something epic happens, like in this video, for example, where all the statues of the champions, like the big ass TF and the big ass Thresh, the big ass Rel, the big ass Azir, like that's kind of fucking badass. But like, there's no build up in the song, and I like the song. Don't get me wrong, but it's funny because the whole meme about playing it in 1.25 times speed, the song is way better in 1.25 times speed.
I just don't really care. Like this is where everyone's gonna get on me. You know me. I don't like this kind of music. Honestly, I just don't. I'm very simple. I'm very boomer music guy. So I wasn't that disappointed. I was like, whatever. With that said, not a lot of people liked last year's world song, and I actually liked that one. I also thought the video from last year was way better too. Um,
Yeah, I
but
mean
yeah,
the video. I mean, okay, I guess that just
the
also
video
made me think
matters,
of
right?
the
Like,
the video does matter, but I think for whatever reason the the team responsible for designing the video keeps
yes,
messing up in
yeah.
using players that they expect to make the world championship as the feature of the video. Like Core
I don't
JJ,
blame them for that though, man. How the hell did you not think Core JJ wasn't gonna be
yeah,
there? You
but
know?
shouldn't like the answer is staring them right in the face because they did that exact same thing last year, and Reckless, who was a big part of that previous music video and the storyline of the video, he didn't make Worlds either. And I feel like that should have been the prime example to revert from what they did that year in terms of, I mean, they even did it the year before with Faker when Faker was in the thing and he didn't make Worlds that year. So I don't
Yeah, but
understand why they
there's
continue to
no
make the
issue
same
with
mis
Faker ever being in that video, right? Come on, like he's game status that he could be in any Worlds video whether he's at Worlds or not.
No, and
Can't we agree on that?
that's because, you know, of who Faker is, but it was
Yeah,
clear that the intention was to put him in the video because he was gonna be at Worlds, and while I
yeah.
think that the video still is fantastic with, you know, even with that information, but I don't know why they continue to make the same mistake with having the video be players that they presume are going to be at Worlds when for 3 years in a row when they've done this, the featured player doesn't make Worlds. And that just, for whatever reason, is really idiotic. I mean, I think they probably got that idea because of how hard Rise went and they had the ambition storyline with him like going up against all those players that he beat and Perks and then Uzi and then Faker. And that was sick. But that was because they were just they were copy pasting the storyline from Worlds 2017 into the 2018 video. And there's nothing wrong with that because it was sick. But now it's like, okay, I just saw Core JJ for half of the video. It's like, guess what? He's not even at fucking Worlds. And why'd they give him Rel? That is such a shit champion to give him. Like that was also stupid.
Somebody made a funny tweet about like, oh, actually, I think it was Diamond that made the tweet about like what the actual bot lane matchup's gonna look like. Like he tweeted out what they want the bot lane matchup to look like with Thresh and Rel,
Yeah,
and he's like,
it's
what it's actually gonna look like, and it's
Yumi
Yumi
and
versus
Karma or some
Lulu or
shit.
something. Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
That was funny. Okay, let me ask you this: do they learn their lesson next year?
No, because they haven't so
I
far.
don't
So
think
why
so
why
either. I don't think so either. But it doesn't bother me that much. Like that's the one thing that I will totally admit is that I'm really boring when it comes to the world song because I think everyone else gets super hyped for it. I don't know why. I just don't. Like I watch it. Don't get me wrong. I do watch it, and I'm like, oh, let's just see what they did this year. But I'm never like blown away, or I'm never like super disappointed, and I don't really know why. I guess it's probably just because it ain't my kind of music, so it's like kind of whatever to me. I just get hyped for the tournament. I guess I'm just that simple of a person. I guess.
Yeah, I mean I like the song, but it's just funny that the song is actually so much better when you play it 1.25 times speed.
I think everyone who listened to it that day probably still had the song in their head, regardless of how much they liked it or hated it. It was in my head the rest of the day, and I wasn't even too crazy about it.
One thing, actually, one last thing I'll say about this, and I watched it in a Cadril video, but he kind of made the point that Riot maybe messed up a little bit. Not messed up, but it was a little like what's the what's the word here? I was gonna use an R and like a non PG rated term here, but like I don't know. Now the word
Oh,
is stuck in my
please!
head
I
that
can't wait.
no, but like they were kind of edging us when they released that like Lil Nas X video where he's like the president of League of Legends and they start playing the song. And Kadra was saying that like he doesn't really like that because when the world song comes out, the world song comes out like it's just there. You see it in your sub box or you see it posted on Twitter. It's like, oh shit, the world song is out now. Whereas we kind of heard what most of the songs sounded like before the video even came out. And while I think whatever like that little snippet they released was good, it didn't have that same like first time feeling when I did watch the world's music video
That's true.
because I kind of went into it. It's like, okay, well, I kind of know what the song sounds like. Now I'm just looking at the video. But guess what? The video was kind of whack because it was featuring Core JJ, and then the song didn't match the video, so that was also whack. So I just think that normally everyone talks about like, oh, the dominoes, like they fell right into like the pieces fell perfectly. Like the pieces did not fall perfectly at all whatsoever with this. It was just like all fucked up for numerous
It was like when
reasons.
someone's setting up the dominoes and then someone sneezes and accidentally knocks half of them over
Yeah,
before you were done finished.
that's what happened.
Yeah, that's what happened right there. Okay. What else we got with the world's 2022 topics? What
Well,
else?
it's Worlds, so we can't talk about Worlds without having a discussion about the Worlds format and how it's whack. And hey, we've had this conversation many times. The Worlds format is whack. The fact that there's no double.
JNT loves format discussion. Loves it.
It
Can't
would
get enough.
hire me, dog. I'll make a better format right now. Oh, guess what? They already have a better format. Oh, wait, guess what? They already use it in their Valorant league, which is like, I mean, I'll agree with everything the community is saying on this. Like, why in the hell are they using the same outdated format when their current other big game, Valorant, has this way better format with double elimination? And it just really is making no sense here.
It feels like with Valorant, they continue to show what they're capable of, and then they don't do it with League. Doesn't it feel like ever since Valorant has existed, everyone's like, man, I wish League of Legends did what Riot did. And everyone's like, why does it happen that way? And then you look at the people running Valorant, and it's all the people that used to run League of Legends.
Yeah.
They all just left and got better.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't know. I like, okay. I'll give my quick 2 cents on this. I don't care that much about the format changing. If there are more best of fives that happen with a double elim bracket and we get more like best of fives between Europe and North America, I will be more than happy to watch them. Without it, I look at it the positives and I say, well, without that, without double elim bracket, North America has a better chance of winning worlds. Feel free to laugh at me for that because we all know the chances of North America winning worlds. But they do go down with double elimination, wouldn't you agree?
I mean, definitely, but at the same time, you're gonna get way more hype series because
True. Yeah, no, I acknowledge
if you
that.
see if you, like, and I'll bring this up because we talked about it right before we went live. Like season 8 Worlds quarterfinals was IG versus KT, the presumed two best teams at the tournament. Looking back on it, that would have been
Yep.
so hyped to see KT potentially run the whole losers bracket, and then you get a rematch of that epic 5 game series that they had. Like that was like a insane 5 game series. Had like that crazy Jackie Love play in game 5, had the backdoor in game 3. Like shit was insane.
Yeah, I totally
And
remember all of
who
it.
wouldn't want to see that series again? Like that shit was epic. Yeah, guess what? You
I
haven't seen that. If you don't remember it, go
I
watch it. You
have seen
bum.
it. My memory sucks. I
Go
actually
watch
don't
it
remember
again
it
then.
though. Nah, I'll trust you. It was good. What else?
Last thing that was kind of interesting and was a bit out of left field was Riot sort of revamped the pick'ems, which they changed a little bit for Worlds 2021, where they made things a little bit more flexible. They added some, you could change your playoff bracket after the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals based on what teams won the previous match. So in this was like pre 2021, you had to pick your whole bracket, and you were either right or you were wrong. But then in 2021, after the quarterfinals matches, you could then update your winner for the semifinals and then finals. And so for 2022, they're adding on to that with a bunch of extra topics, including stuff like which player is going to have the highest KDA, which champion is going to get picked the most, which champion is going to get banned the most, which champion is going to have the highest win rate. And I just think it's a lot of fun things to add to make the pick'ems a little more spicy because it gives maybe non-educated league players a chance to just have more fun with it because I'll talk to a ton of my friends who are doing Worlds Pick'ems, and they'll just like, yo, who do I pick here? Because I don't know fuck all about these teams. However, you actually have kind of a higher chance, and you have just more things to pick when you add on these extra. I think it's like 20 extra picks that you do beforehand, which is just cool. I'm glad they
You know,
changed it.
JT, I completely agree that it looks a lot of fun, and I can't help but notice that it's very similar to something you and I have done many times with our prop sheets. I mean, how can you not see that and not say, "Hey, man,
Yeah.
that's our idea."
Hey, well,
Um,
we might do are we
it's a
doing
good
the prop
change.
sheet again for Worlds Finals?
I certainly want to. That's been the plan the whole time.
Okay. Well,
Uh,
there you go.
I don't. I mean, I think we'll still do it, right?
Yeah,
I
probably.
guess we'll have to wait and see because it is kind of similar, but I think we'll still do it anyways.
Yeah.
As long as we have the money to do it, it's free to enter. Just quick little plug if people don't know what we're talking about. We always do a prop sheet for the finals. And so we'll probably do one again this year with whatever money we have made in donations and subs and whatnot.
Check back
And that'll
in a
be
month.
that'll be the prize pool.
We'll have a link.
I mean, if people want to help contribute to it now, it's still September or whatever. So all the sub
Nice.
money and donation money that we get goes towards the prop sheet finals, and we'll do that. Yeah, we'll still do that for finals, and that'll be fun. And we'll do even more than what they did with these pick'em things. But in short, I think it's great. I think it makes pick'ems a lot more exciting and a lot more interesting. There's way more than just picking the team's forehead. Yeah, and I think that's way more fun. So it's a good thing. Let's leave it at that. It looks like fun.
Yep.
We got quick news. I know it sounds like we're doing quick news already, but we haven't even gotten to quick news yet. So let's get into that now. JT, start off the quick news.
Yep. To stay on topic a little bit, Champions Queue, they reopened it for Worlds. We mentioned this in our previous episode that they were planning on doing it. And yes, the servers are in Mexico. So the teams who are there for the playing tournament some of them have already started to join Champions Queue games. I know there's kind of like a bunch of Twitter on the Champions Queue updates Twitter account. There's a bunch of updates regarding which teams have arrived and are therefore playing Champions Queue. So I think games have been going on for the last 3 days now. There were none the first day, which was kind of funny, but for the last 2 days, there have been some pretty
Well,
active Champions Queue
it
games.
makes sense,
Yeah,
right?
I've been watching a lot
Because
of it. Not
there
a
weren't a lot of
ton.
teams there.
Yeah, not a ton of Worlds players. It still is primarily a lot of the North American LCS teams, academy teams, collegiate teams. But there's some worlds players here and there. We had I mean, last night you kind of talked about it a little bit, but Niski and Jojo Pune were facing each other. I've seen, I think another game I saw a few Isurus players, which are from the, what are they, LLA? And then I think another game I saw, I don't know if it was an RNG player or RNG players, but maybe, oh, it was BYG actually. There was the BYG players were playing.
Mm. Yeah, and like you said, it started off slow, but that's just because there weren't a lot of teams there yet. And you said there's all those tweets of these people joining Champions Queue. Well, now we should expect to see more games. And also, something else that I saw before we went live, Whoopley, the project lead for Champions Queue, said that today we're going to be experimenting with a queue priority for Worlds Pros.
That makes
So
sense.
it sounds like they're going to try to give some priority to Worlds players.
That should definitely be a focus because
Yeah.
even from the gameplays for the players itself, but also for the streaming aspect of it, I don't think people want to. I don't think people want to see IMT Chad versus buttfuck random collegiate jungler, and they want to see Wei versus Pioshik or something.
Sure, but it's not always just about what people want to see as well, right? My worry is, and I don't think this should be an issue, but I do have to bring up the idea that like, if you're not a world's pro, now you might be like, well, I don't want to queue up, and then you might not have enough people queuing up. So that's the
Yeah,
small issue I think that could arise. I don't think it will, but it could, because I think regardless, even if the queues are slower for like just like I don't know, like an academy player, for example, are you really going to pass up the opportunity to play against like RNG and DRX and Mad and all like you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
I
I
think you'll
mean,
wait. Those
if
guys
they
will wait for the longer
if
queues.
they want to get their shit kicked, then go right ahead.
I mean, you kind of do. You're like, look, I want to play against the best. You know,
Yeah,
most of the guys that are in Champions Queue or whatever can't wait for Faker to get here. And mind you, that'll be in New York and whatever. But
yeah.
I'm sure there will
RJS
be
versus
some.
Faker. Are you ready?
Oh, I can't wait.
That was a huge fucking meme that they posted at the end of that Champions Queue article. Like, we're
Yeah.
ready for RGS versus Faker. Are you? Oh, and then guess what? RGS mental boomed 2 days later on Twitter.
Oh, that was after. Oh,
I think it was after. It was the day. It,
oh.
it was either the day after or like a few hours after.
Oh, RJS. Oh, buddy.
Yeah, I didn't even write
Um,
that down,
also,
but go to his Twitter account if you want some good content.
also stay true, Chris, in the live chat pointing out that DRX was on Champions Queue yesterday as well. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
Okay, what's next, JT?
Well, I guess we're about to get into a lot of roster and team rumors, some official, some
Yes.
rumors. But to start off with this, Grabs, the current BDS head coach, former G2 head coach, made a tweet calling out actually a couple of the sources' Twitter accounts. Now, this was a very small one, not your esports Maniacos or LEC Wulu are the big two ones in the LEC that people are normally looking for in terms of credible sources. However, this was a quote unquote sources account that was saying that he was no longer going to be coaching BDS. And Grabs basically just called him out for it. And he was kind of mainly harping on the point of that the sources meta, he called it, is kind of a bit bullshit. And the fact that these people don't necessarily have accurate information all the time and people really shouldn't be believing everything that is coming from these Twitter accounts. And I think that's
Mm,
definitely very relevant information for a lot of the things that we're going to get into a little bit later is rumors are rumors for a reason. They're not official. And while, yes, a lot of rumors that we do hear from these credible accounts like LEC Wulu or Esports Maniacos or, Travis for NA purposes, they're usually fairly accurate, but at the same time, you need to understand that they're rumors and they're not yet official. So, with that in mind, we have some official, some rumors. First up, TSMK's former LCS strategic coach and head scout is no longer with
mhm.
TSM.
Yeah. Which I, for some reason, thought that that had already been announced. Like, I think a few weeks ago when we talked about it, I was like, didn't Kays leave? And you're like, no. And I'm like, oh, okay. And well,
Now he
clearly he
has.
hadn't left because he's left now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But
Also, the other thing too, to add on to your point with the whole like sources thing, the reason why it's such a big issue is because a lot of times what will happen is GMs might see it and take it as like, oh, I didn't know this guy wasn't available anymore, and then they might like focus their attention somewhere else, thinking that a player is unavailable and whatever, right? That's one of the really biggest issues when it comes to like people putting down sources when they don't have enough sources.
I would hope that general managers aren't doing that and are actually like using the phone to call
So that's no, of
relevant
course.
people.
No, but that's of course what you would hope for. But I mean, we've heard in the past many times that players have said they've been influenced, or their
That's true.
situation has been influenced by these kinds of things. So
That's
of
definitely true.
course, yeah, we definitely say, of course, you would hope that GMs are more responsible, but not always. So yeah,
Okay, well, to get into some of the more banger stuff, Team Liquid. Uh, in our last episode, we talked about Steve's video that he put out on his Twitter account addressing TL's poor results in the 2022 season and their potential future with regards to their roster. And we've already found out that Hansama is no longer with Team Liquid, as well as Giotto is no longer going to be the head coach. And just quickly on that Hansama point, he is currently rumored to be joining KC, who is likely going to be in the LEC next year because, once again, rumor, they're going to be buying Astralis' spot.
so what you're saying is you have sources, JNT.
Yeah, I got my sources,
Yeah, man. I think I was talking with Andrew about this. No, actually, it was freaking Manders in the chat. Um, we were saying like people just put sources on stuff, but if you don't have to put the sources, you and I could make a tweet and be like sources.
Yep, we
I
could.
could put a source that JNT is Challenger. We all know that's a lie.
What are you talking about? I'm a
Yeah.
beast.
Yeah, XD. Okay, but anyways, no, yeah, I don't know. These are rumors, so keep going with the rumors, JNT. What
Yeah,
else?
well, rumor has it, Core JJ and Bjergsen are not going to be on the same team next year, and that came from Travis, I think, said
That was
in.
from a couple weeks ago of Hotline, but we didn't. We had a week off, so yeah,
Yeah, so, and that was primarily because he said that Core JJ and Bjergsen see the game very differently, and
yeah.
I don't know, for whatever reason, I've been hearing that sort of keyword, don't see the game, or see the game differently a lot in the last couple of years as a reason why these bigger teams with star players tend to break up.
Uh
And
huh.
one thing that I just don't understand about it is like at a certain point, like just get on the same fucking page. Like I understand that you can be like potentially a bit stubborn in your ways in terms of how you want to play the game as opposed to how the team wants to play the game. But dude, like the results are about the team, and I feel like whether it's the player's fault or the head coach's fault, at a certain point you need to pick a direction for your team. So maybe that has something to do with why Giotto isn't going to be the head coach anymore because maybe he was indecisive about how they wanted to play the game or if they were
Dude,
flip
any
flopping back
head
and
coach
forth.
that they didn't win, any head coach is not being
Oh,
brought for next year with that roster. Any head coach, regardless of what you know what I'm saying.
yeah, no, but
Like Kyoto was gone, no matter
probably,
what.
but there's also the chance that, maybe they flip flop back and forth between it's like, okay, well, we haven't been doing so well. Now let's go to Core JJ's vision. It's like, oh shit, that's not working out. Like, let's go back to Bjergsen. So I don't know.
Fair
For
enough.
whatever reason, this whole, point of players seeing the game differently, I really don't understand, somewhat. I think part of that has to do with the head coach and not just saying, hey, guess what? We're doing this because that's what the head coach is for. And yes, we've talked about this in the past that all league teams are very, very different in terms of who's actually running the team. Because in the case of Bjergsen teams in the past, he's kind of acting as the head coach, and maybe that was just a problematic relationship between him and Core JJ because Bjergsen is kind of the default leader head coach, whereas Core JJ has probably been that guy for Team Liquid ever since he came into the team. So maybe that sort of dynamic wasn't working, and that's part of the reason why TL struggled. But I feel like, those two guys, like, they're some of the best players in the league. They can't just get on the same fucking page. Like, come on, like, just drop your fucking pride for a second. Try to play as a team.
I I mean, I don't think it's as simple as you're making it out to be. I don't think it's necessarily a thing of pride. It's if you see the game one way, you can't just pretend that you don't see the game that way.
Yeah, but
You
if you're
get what
not,
I'm saying?
but if you're not winning, like, they need to recognize that they need to change something. Like, if Core JJ is like,
Sure.
if either side is super adamant about what they want to do, and it's not working, I feel like at a certain point you just gotta you gotta just accept it and move on.
Sure enough, or fair enough, but also can we not say that maybe they did try to play both styles and we saw them play a bunch of different shit this year. None of it seemed to work consistently. So maybe there is a world where they did try Core JJ's world and
But
then where they did try Bjergsen's world, and
once again, I
neither of them
think
could live in that world
I
or
think
have
yeah,
success in it.
this is all speculation, but once
Mhm.
again, I think that goes back to my point about the head coach, and that should be part of the head coach's job is to pick the path, whether it's the right or the wrong path. You got to pick a path. I know in
Yeah.
in league, everybody likes to talk about, especially in high solo queue and pro plays, like everybody on the team needs to follow the play, regardless if it's a good or a bad play, because it's way more difficult to fix trust issues within teammates of like, okay, some people are going for this play, other people's aren't, as opposed to just finding out what that correct play is and everybody committing to that. So being flip floppy in terms of your play style throughout over the course of a year is problematic, and I think can be to the head coach's fault, regardless of what the actual power dynamic is within that team.
And I think it's totally fair to see a roster that was this good and say a coach should be able to figure out one way to have success with these guys. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. So I can kind of get behind that.
Hmm. And next up, for somewhat Team Liquid related, but also has some relevance for other teams around the world. This is according to LEC Wulu, said that Team Liquid isn't the only team that is going to be reducing their budget for 2023. That seems to be the way that things are trending in the LEC now. I think that's a very interesting point for TL, obviously, because it was kind of made apparent in Steve's video that TL was going to be looking more internally for
Hmm.
their potential roster for 2023 as opposed to buying the best players from around the world, which is what they've been doing for the last 4 years. And over in the LEC, I feel like that's been something that's been going on for quite a while now because we see tons of LEC teams take risks on young, up and coming players, whether they're from regional leagues or from previous LEC teams. A player that's been dropped from one team, but people think that he still has great potential and decide to pick him up. So to me, that's not a big surprise that that is sort of a trend that's going on in the LEC now because we've seen some pretty good results from some very young teams. You look at Misfits from 2021, even Misfits this year in the spring split were looking pretty good. Um, you know, Rogue even they lose their big name jungler and inspired and bring in a fairly unknown guy in Malrong who was the backup for Damwon at the time. Comp who was not a star ADC but seems to be performance wise a star ADC. So not
Dude,
really.
that bot lane got so much better as the year went on. I was like really not impressed with them earlier, and then playoffs came around. And I was like, oh my god. So yeah, that is an area where you definitely saw some improvement from some newer players.
Yeah, but just for him to say that like that's a trend that's going on in the LEC, like I feel like we've already been seeing that.
Well, I think it's interesting as well because when like the LEC affects the LCS and vice versa, right? Because a lot of all the players generally speak English, and so as long as there's import spots available for North America, they will go after those European players. And so you wonder if the budget is getting lower for LEC, if that makes it more likely for some North American teams. I don't think it will, but you wonder if it makes it more likely for some North American teams to say, "Oh, here's our opportunity to get X European player."
Yeah,
Maybe, maybe not. Now,
that's
I don't
true.
think that's the case because I think a bunch of North American teams made their push this year because Worlds was in North America. But it's possible. You never know,
That's
especially for
actually a
teams that are desperate enough, like TSM,
Yeah,
right?
that's
They're
actually
desperate to look
something
good.
I didn't even think of with the reducing budget in the LEC. Maybe that draws more players to the LCS. I literally didn't even think about that. So that
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
we'll see,
Um,
right? To be
next up,
determined.
speaking of LCS/LEC, Mr. Broxa,
Oh, let's go, Broxa!
he was saying on his stream that he really, 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 really wants to play professional next year. Which,
He really wants to play.
yeah,
Okay, but he was actually so serious in that video, which I'm fired up. I love Broxa. I love that guy. So I will be cheering for him no matter what team he's on. I don't care. NAEU, I love Broxa. Let's go, Broxa.
Yeah, just for some context, in this clip of him saying that he wants to play pro again, he said really about 4 times in a row. So
He really wants to play.
yeah, I personally hope he just goes to the LEC because I don't think there's any spots on good North American teams going into next year. Blabber most likely is going to be staying with Cloud9. Inspired is most likely staying with EG unless budget or whatever, or he gets picked up by G2 or something for next year. I have no idea, but I think it's likely that the top 4 teams in the league are going to have their junglers locked. And those top 4 teams being 100 Thieves, C9, Team Liquid, and EG. Obviously, we know that Spica is a free agent, So he's going to be a hot commodity in North America, primarily because he's a resident, but also because he's one of the better junglers in the league. So that'll felt,
Spica as
yeah.
well. There's a brand there.
Mhm. And whether he goes to a team, who knows? Maybe a team like Witter 100 Thieves decides to make a move for Spica, but guess what? That puts Santorin or Inspired on the open market, or closer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I
So
wouldn't mind if Broxa came back to the LCS. I don't care which league he goes to. I just want to see him play
yeah,
again.
I just hope for his sake he goes to the LEC, because there does seem to be a lot more parity in the LEC in terms of teams going up or down. I think I'm trying to think of a team that I'd like him to join, because unlikely that he goes to G2 unless Yankos retires or something like that. Fnatic, who knows? Maybe Razork hasn't had the best year. Maybe he collapses at Worlds or something like that. Maybe we see Fnatic Broxa again. I mean, I just think the options are so much more likely over in the LEC than the LCS in terms of him getting on a competitive roster.
Yeah, well, the thing is like the last time that he played in the LCS, he was not on a competitive roster, anyways. So, while I don't want to see him go through that CLG shit again, you could make the argument that it can't be much worse.
That's true. I mean, I still don't even know how he ended up on CLG in the first place, because he actually was still decent when he was on Team Liquid, but for
The
whatever
thing
reason,
is,
he was on CLG.
I gotta remind people though, going into that year, people did not expect CLG to be that bad, right?
That's true.
Like CLG was, I mean, it's easy to look back and be like CLG XD, which we love to do on this podcast. But going into that year, it was like CLG was, they were probably like the immortals of this year. Remember how like at the start of this year, people were like, Immortals could maybe push into the top five. And then we quickly learned that was not the case. And then Immortals was bad for the rest of the year. That's pretty much what CLG was that the last year that he played.
That's true. Yeah.
So, anyways, I'm happy for Broxa. I hope he gets a spot.
Alrighty, then last up. Now, this is a topic that we don't really know how to even say this or how to talk about this, because there seems to be a lot of unclear information surrounding the subject.
This goes
But
back to the sources talk.
yes, so what was it, yesterday? Or it was yesterday, right? Sunday. Okay.
I don't know.
Either way, over the weekend there was a tweet from LCS EV, which is like the LEC Wooloo counterpart. But he tweeted out saying that Dignitas was potentially going to be selling their LCS spot to Sentinels. Yes, that's you heard that correctly. Sentinels, the big Valorant squad that they're basically the most popular Valorant team in North America, but that they were potentially looking to buy an LCS spot, but that deal was going to fall through because they didn't have the funding because of their VCT slot. However, this was quickly dismissed by the Sentinels CEO. I forget his name.
Rob Moore.
Rob Moore. Okay, I was going to say Bob
I'm
Moore,
looking
but
at it.
Rob Moore basically tweeted out saying that that's completely incorrect, and the fact that a lot of people are buying this 3K Twitter account whole thing goes back to the sources topic. Was kind of complete bullshit, and there was other people in the scene that were sort of supporting Rob Moore's case that Sentinels was never pursuing a LCS spot. Lena, TSM Lena apparently is working with Sentinels on this, or not on this, but just in general, and she confirmed that Sentinels has not been looking to buy an LCS slot at all. She can say whatever she wants to say, that maybe there still was some truth to them wanting to buy an LCS spot, but it looks like they're not in the running. But
The
also they,
Lena thing is out of left field because I
yeah,
didn't even know she was part of Sentinels. I don't know where that came from. Apparently, Lena's helping the Sentinels.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. That's something else as well. Like that's quick news in itself.
yeah. And
As
once
far as
again,
the as far as the Rob Moore thing though, like I just gotta say I don't like the this guy's only got 3K followers. Like look, he's either right or he's wrong, and the number of followers that he has doesn't really mean anything. Like, if his like, don't get me wrong, he won't get more followers now that he's been wrong. But I don't like the discrediting of someone just by how many followers they have. Like, he is new to what he's doing,
I didn't take it
and
like that
he
personally.
definitely fucked up. He definitely fucked up, and needs to be better with his sources and whatnot. But to me, it was like I don't know. I don't see a reason to get so. I understand the frustrations, but I don't see the reason to dunk on this guy because he's only got 3K followers or whatever.
I didn't necessarily. I mean, obviously, he was kind of shitting on LCS EV for, I guess, falsely reporting this situation. But I don't think he
Yeah,
was like kind of shitting on LCS EV because he has 3K followers. I think, to me, I took it as he was more shitting on the community for eating it all up when this is a guy who only has 3,000 followers. It was not like
yeah.
I don't know. I didn't see it as like, oh, you have 3,000 followers, haha. It's like, well, this guy has 3,000 followers, so like, is everyone really just eating this up?
Yeah.
That's how I saw it. I didn't. It didn't seem to me like he was taking shots at Elsie's Evie personally. It was more the fact that the community was buying this from a very low follower account.
And in all fairness, like if you're gonna do what LCS EV is doing, you better damn well have sources if you're putting sources. So I think it's a mistake that LCS EV is learning. I think he's learning the hard way because he's probably really, really embarrassed about what happened. And honestly, I don't think you get many more chances, right? If you do something like a really big mistake like this again, then you're really, cut off from people taking your word seriously. So I don't know. I get maybe I'm just too forgiving. I don't know. To me, I look at it like, oh, the guy fucked up. Live and learn. Move on. We still, you and I, we got to make our own. We got to create a rumor and just put sources, but it needs to be so ridiculously stupid.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go make one of those like shit posting accounts, like Evil Jacob
Yeah.
Wolf or something.
No, you got to use your real account and make some shit post that's so dumb that no one will buy it, and you got to slap sources on there. And we'll think of something. Maybe we'll think of something next week, and we'll tweet out some bullshit sources thing.
Yeah, I got to think of something funny then if I'm gonna actually do it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll do that for
It's
next
got to
week.
be
That
something just really absurd.
Yeah, and that is it for this episode, right? No more quick news?
No, that's it. Not so quick, but that's all the news.
Yeah. I mean, when is the last time quick news has been quick? It hasn't been quick for like 2 years now. Okay. That's it for this episode, guys. Again, like I said earlier in the show, we do plan to be live again next week, probably on Tuesday the
October the
4th.
4th.
That is the current plan. It is subject to change on, and I'm sorry, we can't guarantee because worlds gets wacky. So that's how it is. Again, reminder: hit the subscribe button, comment, and like. That stuff helps us out tremendously. And welcome to all the new viewers and listeners to our channel. We love having you guys. We'll see you guys next week. This has been episode 101 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. Goodbye.